I stood before the mirror in the bathroom of my sister Claire's house. The woman staring back at me was both familiar and a stranger, her sharp eyes whispering oceans of truth. I had come looking for aspirin getting ready for my mother Margaret's 60th birthday, but instead I stumbled upon a positive blue pregnancy test and a note from Daniel. Love you forever, D. Proof that my husband was having an affair with my own sister. And worse, Margaret, my mother, was the one helping them betray me behind my back. Now I will plan how to take ruthless, devastating revenge on these heartless traitors. Before we dive deep into this dramatic story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming tales. And leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. And now, dear audience, let's dive into this gripping story together. The ocean's breath was a restless murmur, its waves clawing at the rocky shore of our Maine coastal home. I stood in Claire's bathroom, the air thick with the scent of lavender, and secrets my fingers trembling, as I held a pregnancy test, its plastic casing a robin's egg blue, the same hue as the throw pillows I'd chosen for the living room Daniel had praised as my gift for warmth. It was my mother Margaret's 60th birthday celebration, a day meant for joy, but I'd come searching for aspirin to dull the ache in my temples. Instead, I found this a positive test wrapped in toilet paper buried beneath cotton balls in Claire's trash. My gut, that silent drum I'd ignored for months, urged me to unwrap it, and there folded inside was a note in Daniel's unmistakable hand. Can't wait to tell her. 2 more weeks till the first trimester's done. Love you always, D. The world tilted my breath, a jagged shard. I was Nora, 34, married 12 years to Daniel, 38. The man I'd carried through law school, whose dreams I'd cradled over my own, and now my sister Claire, 30, carried his child. Claire's voice broke through the fog. Nora, did you locate the aspirin? The lines on the note burned. Daniel's D curves were like blades, the same flourish I'd traced on love letters, anniversary cards, and promises written over a decade. I was transfixed, holding the test and note tightly, my reflection in the glass. A stranger eyes, wide lips, pale, a woman unmoored when she spoke in an anxious tone that I had mistaken for party stress. Nora. When Claire saw what I was holding, her face turned to ash, and she emerged at the doorway. D stands for Daniel, correct? My husband is the father of your baby. I muttered, my voice a wraith steady, despite the storm inside. It wasn't a question, but a truth etched into my bones. Claire's palm moved to her slightly enlarged abdomen, an action so instinctive it validated everything. How long, Nora, please? I said, the calm mask covering the glass fragments in my throat, her eyes full. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? She mumbled. 1.5 years. And each word was a stone, heavy and piercing. The revelation was like a tsunami that crashed through me. Since after my miscarriage, she nodded, tears streaming down her face as I staggered by her the hallway, a tunnel, the air too thin to breathe. The recollection of that loss, our child gone 2 years ago now, a wound reopened. Margaret, my mother, stood there with her face not shocked, but exhausted, as if she had held this secret for too long. You knew, I said, ice water pouring into my veins. You've known all along. She reached for me. Daniel and I have been discussing how to tell you. The betrayal tripled a hydra with her face. Daniel and you, I echoed. You've been plotting behind my back. My husband's affair with my sister. Her voice softened. Daniel and you, I repeated, Daniel and you. We didn't want to hurt you, Nora. Sometimes feelings shift. I raised the pregnancy test and the note, my hand shaking, and said, Don't you dare speak of their feelings. The living room was a stage with Daniel setting up drinks for the party, whistling a tune that died when he saw me. His smile faltered, his eyes locking on the evidence in my grasp. Nora, I can explain, he said, his guilt spilling before I spoke. That you've been having affairs with Claire, that she's expecting your child, that you left this love note in her test, I said sharply. The shards of the crystal tumbler, which he claimed we couldn't afford to replace, reflected my heart as it fell out of his grasp and broke on the hardwood. It's not what you think, Daniel said, his lawyer's tone soothing. We never meant for this to happen. The lie was acid burning through 12 years of fidelity, and I had put off having children for his career, moved from friends for his firm, and defended him when my father Richard called him ambition without soul. I turned to Claire and said, I shared everything with you, my home, my fears, my grief after the miscarriage. Was it fun watching me cry for a child while you carried mine? Margaret went up and said, let's sit down and discuss this rationally, as a family. To which I responded with a giggle that was like shattering ice. It wasn't like that, Nora. We fell in love. She cringed. Love, the word was poison. Do we really believe that? 12 years, Daniel, I built your life, and you. Claire, you stole it, and Margaret, you blessed it. I said, grabbing my coat with deliberate movements. Nora, don't leave, Margaret begged. Where are you going? The pitying looks were like a cage waiting for me to scream, cry, or collapse. Instead, I smiled a terrifying crescent that made Daniel back off. I turned and committed their faces to memory, not for love, but for war to begin the rest of my life. You will remember today as your greatest mistake. The first night was a crucible. I checked into a harborside hotel in Portland, the kind Daniel called extravagant, booking the presidential suite with our joint card a defiant spark. On the balcony, city lights blurred through tears I refused to shed. I pieced together their betrayal's timeline. Late-night texts. Daniel hid Sunday brunches. Claire planned without me. Margaret's sudden defense of him in our arguments. The miscarriage 2 years ago. My depression, a shadow he'd escaped too easily. I scrolled through photos last Christmas. Daniel's arm around Claire, both laughing, Margaret smiling fondly. I'd been behind the camera, capturing a family, already fracturing by 3:00 a.m. Their texts flooded in. Daniel, please come home. We need to talk. Claire. I know you hate me, but think of the baby. Margaret. This family's survived worse. Come home, blood's thicker than water. I laughed until I cried their words a mockery. The baby, their baby, not mine. By dawn, a cold clarity settled. I wouldn't give them my tears or rage. I'd be a storm calculated relentless. The ocean roared outside my grandmother's voice in its depths. The tide claims what's hers, Nora? So will you. This wasn't my end, but their reckoning's beginning. The voice of the ocean was a restless chant, and its waves carved shadows into the cliffs outside my Portland hotel. I stood on the balcony, the lights of the city, a far-off constellation, their glow unable to penetrate the darkness inside. 2 days had gone by since Daniel's note, Love you always D, had broken 12 years of trust, and my sister Claire, 30, was carrying his child a secret, blessed by our mother Margaret, 60, and their betrayal a tide that drowned my past. I was Nora, 34, no longer the woman who had built her life around Daniel's dreams, but a storm rising my heart, a drum for vengeance. The Maine coast roared below my grandmother's voice in its depths, and the tide knows its path. Nora, so must you. I'd fled our home, but not my purpose. In this solitude, I pieced together their lies, formed alliances, and started to weave a tapestry of retribution, one that would bind them all. The hotel suite was a fortress, its opulence paid with Daniel's credit card, a quiet rebellion. My phone buzzed relentlessly with Daniel's pleas, Nora, come home. We can fix this. Claire's guilt, I'm so sorry. Think of the baby Margaret's arrogance. Enough drama, blood's thicker than water. Each message was a spark fueling my resolve. I silenced them, my tears dried by a cold clarity. The timeline of their deceit took shape in my mind. Daniel's late-night texts hidden when I entered the room. Claire's sudden brunches with him, excluding me under the guise of planning Margaret's birthday. Margaret's defense of Daniel during our arguments. Her voice sharp. He's trying, Nora. Be patient. I'd been blind, grieving our miscarriage 2 years ago, a loss that had hollowed me while Daniel sought solace in Claire's arms. A photo from last Christmas haunted me. Daniel's hand on Claire's shoulder, their laughter a private song. Margaret's fond smile, I'd snapped the picture, unaware I was capturing my own betrayal. The ocean growled. They wove their lies, Nora. Now weave your truth. Lena Hart, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the state, gained her reputation by representing cheating husbands. I met her in a cafe by the harbor. the salt air sharp, and her eyes like flint as I laid out the evidence, the test, the note, Claire's confession, Margaret's complicity. Daniel slept with my sister, got her pregnant, and my mother helped hide it. I said, my voice steady despite the pain. Lena's smile was a wolf's. Nora will dismantle him. You'll keep the house, the savings, and your dignity. I handed her the joint account statements, which serve as evidence of Daniel's covert dinners with Claire. There's more, he's been reckless at his firm. I suspect ethical violations. Her pen stopped. You're not just a scorned wife, you're a strategist. I like that. Sign here. The divorce papers were a vow, and my signature was a first step. Emotional distress, alienation of affection. We'll sue them too. But first we need more evidence, I said, and Lena leaned forward. The tide's chant rose. Gather your arrows, Nora. Aim true, she said. I then called my college boyfriend, Ethan Cole, who is now a digital forensics expert in Boston. We met at a quiet library, with the smell of old books as a balm, and he said, Nora, this is personal. When I gave him Daniel's and Claire's phone numbers, he said, it's borderline illegal to pull deleted texts. But I met his gaze and said, the account's in my name, I pay the bills, it's my right. He nodded. I'll do it for you, but be careful, this path changes you. His warning was a shadow, but I was already changed. The miscarriage, the lies, the note they'd forged me into something sharper. I considered Daniel's excuses. It just happened, Claire's tears. We fell in love, Margaret's platitudes. These things happen, and they'd treated me as nothing disposable, but I was fire. The ocean whispered, you are not their shadow, Nora. You are the flame. The most difficult call I ever had was to my father, Richard, who lives in Arizona and has been estranged from Margaret since their divorce 5 years ago. I sat on the hotel bed with the phone weighing heavily, and I said, Dad, my voice breaking for the first time, I need you. I told him everything, the test, Claire's pregnancy, Daniel's affair, and Margaret's betrayal. His silence was a canyon, and then, I always knew he was hollow, and Claire, she's too much like your mother. I need your help, I said, because Margaret had an affair with my brother early in our marriage. She called it a mistake, and I forgave her. But some people, Nora, take what they want, no matter who bleeds. The revelation was a wave that dragged me under. Margaret's complicity wasn't new. It was part of her history, repeated with her consent. The largest clients were handled by Daniel's firm. I do, he said. Why? He paused thoughtfully, saying, you're going after his career. I'm going after everything, I murmured, because I think he's been cutting corners, falsifying evidence to win cases. Will you help? He said, I'm on the next flight. As the water roared, Kin and Nora rose, and so did you. Back in the suite, I rummaged through memories, each one a clue to their deceit. The miscarriage had been my darkest moment, and my depression a fog from which Daniel seemed to escape. Now I knew why Claire's texts, her consolation, their affair blossoming while I wept. I discovered a receipt in our joint account, a restaurant in Portland, dated the week after my loss. Daniel had told me that he was working late, but the charge was for 2. My laptop glowed as I accessed our cloud photos, a folder labeled Work Trips. Daniel and Claire, at a lake house, her smile radiant, his arm around her timestamps from last summer, when I had been home organizing Margaret's charity gala. The betrayal was a map, and each pin was a lie. I printed everything, my hands, steady, my heart a drum. Sophia, Margaret's housekeeper, called out of the blue, her voice low. Miss Nora, I heard what happened. Mrs. Margaret's planning something with the baby, a trust from your grandmother's estate. My breath caught. The flood sang, the truth is your blade, Nora. Wield it. She paused, then whispered, it's stealing. It's protecting what's mine, and they're stealing from me, Sophia. She agreed, her loyalty a spark. Daniel's calls became frantic, and he expressed that Nora's silence was childish. Let's talk. Claire's messages softened. Sis, I know you're hurt. The baby needs you. Margaret's tone hardened. Come home, you're not the first wife to face this. I saved each one, my arsenal growing. The hotel balcony was my haven, the ocean's chant my guide, and I thought of my grandmother's letter, locked in a safe deposit box, with her warning, Don't open unless someone tries to take what's yours. I'd retrieve it tomorrow, its secret's a shield. I was Nora, and I was gaining strength like the storm brewing over the Maine coast. Daniel, Claire, and Margaret, they thought me broken, but I was creating something new, a reckoning to carve their lies into dust. The ocean vowed, "You are the tide, Nora. Rise and claim your stars." The ocean's pulse was like a war drum, and the waves pounded the Maine cliffs beneath my Portland hotel. I stood in the gray light of dawn, and the city's silhouette was a jagged scar against the sky. 10 days had gone by since Daniel's note, "Love you always D," disclosed his affair with my sister Claire. 30, and her pregnancy, and my mother Margaret 60, had woven their secret into her heart, betraying me with a smile. I was Nora 34. No longer the woman who had harbored Daniel's ambitions, but a tide rising, and my soul was a chant for justice. The hotel suite served as a sanctuary where I sharpened my determination. My grandmother's voice sounded, "The tide cuts deep, Nora. So must your truth." I gathered evidence, exposed their lies, and held my grandmother's letter, a shield against their greed, preparing for the war they didn't see coming. Every morning, I awoke to their messages. Daniel's message was desperate. "This isn't you, Nora." Claire cried, "Come home. You're hurting yourself. Go back to your family." And Margaret's condescension, "You're hurting yourself. Go back to your family." A folder of recovered texts between Daniel and Claire, spanning 2 years, arrived at dawn, and I sat on the balcony, the salt air sharp, and read their betrayal. Claire, "She's crying again. I can't handle it." Daniel, "Come over. I'll make it better. She'll never know." My grief had been their opportunity, their affair blossoming in secret apartments paid for with our joint account. Photos followed, showing Daniel and Claire at a lake house. Her laughter bright, his hand possessive, dated while I planned Margaret's gala. Every word and image was a stone in my arsenal. The ocean was growling, "Their lies are dust. Nora, build your blade." I drove to the bank where the safe deposit box held my grandmother's letter. Her warning given on her deathbed echoed, "Don't open unless someone tries to take what's yours." The envelope was heavy, and her elegant script was a lifeline. "My dearest Nora, if you read this, my fears about Margaret are true. She favors Claire her mirror, but you have your grandfather's honor. The trust $2 million is locked for you and Claire until 35 unchangeable. The documents with Margaret are false. See Thomas Reed, my lawyer." A business card for Thomas Reed was tucked inside, and I called him from the car while the ocean roared, "Ms." We met in his office, the smell of leather and ink grounding me. He slid the true trust across his desk and said, "Margaret's amendment redirecting your share to Claire's child is fraud. Attempting to file it is a crime." "I've waited for this, Lawson," he said in a warm voice. "Your grandmother foresaw Margaret's greed." My heart pounded. "What now? We wait for her to act, then we strike," he said with a steely smile. "Your shield is strong. Nora, wield it." The tide sung. "Miss Nora, I have the papers for Mrs. Margaret's trust amendment regarding the baby." "They are in her study," Sophia whispered when she called me that afternoon. "Can you bring them?" I gasped. She paused and said, "I'm risking my job." "You're saving what's mine, Sophia. And you've always been family." She came to a cafe with the documents concealed in a grocery bag, and the amendment, which was drafted but unsigned, redirected my $1 million share to a trust for Claire's child. Margaret's intent was clear, though, and Sophia's loyalty was a spark that was brighter than Margaret's betrayal. I called Lena Hart and said, "We'll add it to the lawsuit fraud, emotional distress, alienation. Your mother's finished. Keep digging on Daniel Count." And the ocean roared. Daniel's manipulation intensified when he left a voicemail at midnight that said, "Nora, I love you. Claire was a mistake. Let's fix this for us." His voice, once my anchor, was now a lie. I played it for Lena. "He's scared," she said. "He knows you're not breaking." When I knew he would be at his firm, I went home, and the house was silent, its walls heavy with memories. I packed carefully, packing clothes, my design portfolio, and my grandmother's antique jewelry, which had been intended for me, not Claire. In the kitchen, our wedding photo stared back Daniel's eyes, Once my son, now a mask, which I tore in half, leaving it on the counter, a silent vow. When Daniel returned home, I sat in the darkened living room, calm as the eye of a storm. Thank God he breathed, I've been worried sick. That's interesting, I said in a cold voice. Nora, we need to talk like adults, he added cautiously. Adults, I repeated. Is that what you call a man who sleeps with his wife's sister and fathers her child while lying to me? It wasn't planned. It just happened. He cringed. An affair is choices, Daniel. Every text, every meeting, every lie, choices you made. I said, laughing with a sound like breaking waves. I love you, Nora, but with Claire it's different, a desire we couldn't fight, he said, sitting weightily across from me. His honesty felt like a twisting dagger. How long, a year and a half after the miscarriage, you were so aloof while Claire was present? I asked, and he hesitated. My sadness, my loss was weaponized against me. And Margaret, when did she know? I asked. 6 months ago, he acknowledged. She walked in on us at the lake house. She was upset, but understood. She said we'd tell you after Claire's first trimester because of your history. The calculated cruelty took my breath away. They had concealed it, not for me, but for the health of the unborn child. I gave you everything. I whispered, law school, my friends, my dreams, and you discarded me. He looked sad. I'll take care of you financially. I'm not a monster. I stood and retrieved the divorce papers. Sign these or don't. I'm gone either way. His face darkened. You're impulsive. We need counseling. I smiled coldly. The water pledged, you are the storm, Nora. Let them tremble. Not to Margaret, who thinks I should forgive you for the family, I said, turning with my baggage in hand. I have no family. You took it, but I'm not nothing. Remember that. I returned to the hotel the night alive with purpose. Ethan's next delivery arrived emails from Daniel to his law partner, admitting to falsified evidence in Meridian cases. Although it wasn't a criminal act, it had the potential to jeopardize his partnership bid. Richard called, his voice steady. Meridian's board is reviewing Daniel's cases. My contact found discrepancies. It's enough for an ethics probe. I thanked him, my father's loyalty, a beacon. Sophia's documents, Ethan's texts, Lena's strategy. They were my arrows. Margaret's trust amendment was the heart of their greed. I met Thomas Reed again. When she files, we'll charge fraud, he said. Your grandmother's trust is ironclad. My 35th birthday, 3 months away, would secure my $1 million untouchable. Daniel's calls grew desperate. Claire's messages begged for the baby. Margaret's demanded my return, and I answered none. The ocean's chant was my guide. The tide rises, Nora. Your stars await. They thought me broken, but I was forging a blade sharp enough to cut their world to ruins. The ocean's heart was a thunderous vow, its waves breaking against the main cliffs, their spray a mist of stars under the moon. I stood in my Portland hotel, the lights of the city, a faint echo of the fire within. 6 weeks had carved me into something new, since Daniel's note, "Love you always, D," and Robin's egg blue pregnancy test had revealed his affair with my sister Claire, 30, and her child. His child, Margaret, 60. My mother had cradled their secret, and her betrayal was a tide that drowned my trust. I was Nora, 34. No longer the woman who had dimmed her light for Daniel's dreams, but a storm unleashed my spirit, a chant for retribution. My grandmother's voice surged with the tide, Nora, so shall you. Tonight, at Margaret's rescheduled 60th birthday dinner, I would use my evidence texts, photos, the fraudulent trust, and burn their lies to ash. The war I'd been in silence would speak, and they would know my name. My preparations were a ritual, with each piece of evidence serving as a valuable addition to my arsenal. Ethan Cole's 2-year-old texts revealed Daniel and Claire's affair, their words a map of deceit. Sophia's documents revealed Margaret's attempt to steal my $1 million inheritance, redirecting it to Claire's child. And Lena Hart had woven these into a lawsuit: fraud, emotional distress, alienation of affection, while Richard's Meridian contacts uncovered Daniel's falsified evidence, enough for an ethics probe. I had rented an apartment, opened new accounts, and secured a job at a design firm after Daniel had laid me off. The last messages from Daniel, Claire, and Margaret were saved on my phone. Daniel's manipulation, Nora. I'll fix this. Don't throw us away. Claire's desperation. The baby needs you, sis. Forgive us. Margaret's arrogance. This tantrum shames you. Return to family. I saved each my silence a blade. The ocean roared. Your arrows are sharp, Nora. Let them fly. The dinner was at a restaurant on a cliff, with windows that framed the sea's never-ending dance. I arrived last, my crimson dress, a flame power woven into its silk. Margaret's practiced smile faltered as I entered the room, and her eyes flicked to the guests' family friends, unaware of the rot beneath our facade. Daniel stood uncertain in his stance, and Claire sat her swollen belly, a silent accusation, her hand protective. I took the empty chair and placed a thick envelope on the table. A gift, I said, my voice clear, for the woman who taught me loyalty. Margaret's fingers trembled, sensing the storm. How thoughtful, I'll open it later. Open it now, I insisted, my tone unstoppable. She hesitated, then lifted the flap, her face pale, as she scanned the first page. As calm as the sea before a storm, I added, Grandmother's true trust, she whispered. Not the fraud you drafted, stealing my inheritance for Claire's child. Gasps echoed through the table, and guests shifted their eyes wide. Margaret stumbled and said, I don't know what you mean. The present isn't the time. I continued. Page 2. A letter from the Bar Association investigating Daniel's ethics infractions at Meridian falsified evidence. His partnership's gone. Daniel jumped up and asked, What have you done? His voice was a hiss. What you taught me, I responded. Family protects itself, except I protect me now. I turned to the guests and spoke steadily. My husband and sister have been in love for 2 years. She is carrying his child. My mother knew, hid it, and tried to steal my $1 million to fund their future. The silence was a chasm. Claire shed tears. Daniel's face felt depleted, and Margaret's hands firmly grasped the table. Nora, stop, she said, her voice trembling. You're humiliating yourself. No, I said, I'm standing tall. Your texts with Daniel, where he calls you a convenient distraction. Not as complicated as me, where he plans to keep me his meal ticket wife for my family's connections. Frantically, Claire grabbed the papers and asked, What is she saying? You liar, she choked. You said we'd be a family, that you loved me. Daniel rushed for her. Baby, she's twisting it. She grabbed back. Don't touch me. Was any of it true? She read, her breath catching, then stood, her hand still on her belly, and slapped Daniel. The sound was like a crack of thunder. I felt a twinge of sympathy, because Claire had also been deceived, but her betrayal was just as severe. Margaret attempted to rally the group, saying things like, Let's calm down, Daniel. Explain, Claire. Sit. Think of the baby. You've always chosen them, always shielding them, never me. And, since we were kids, Claire was your mirror, I was your shadow. I stood in control of the room and said, One last page, I intend to file a lawsuit against all of you, alleging fraud, emotional distress, and alienation. My attorneys will serve you tomorrow, Daniel. Your firm's notified. You're on leave. Your office is packed, Margaret. The Lawson Foundation knows you're fraud. They'll vote to remove you next week. Grandmother's legacy deserves better. Daniel became furious and screamed, You are vindictive. You have ruined everything. No, I replied. You ruined everything when you prioritized your desires over our vows. Margaret's face fell flat, her social empire crumbling. You would ruin this family. This family destroyed itself, I responded. I'm collecting the debt. I turned to Claire, who was crying uncontrollably. Nora, the baby, your niece or nephew, I said, pausing, the weight of her words a stone. I hope you're a better mother than ours. That child deserves loyalty, I said to the guests. I'm sorry for the disruption. Truth is never gentle. I lifted my purse, the ocean chanting my heartbeat. As I left, Claire sobbed, Nora, wait. But I didn't turn. The night air was cool and salty, and my phone buzzed. Richard Trust secured Margaret's amendment, flagged as fraud. You okay? I typed, I'm free. You are the fire, Nora. The tide roared, and let their ashes fall. Lena called at the crack of dawn, saying, "The firm has suspended Daniel. The ethics probe is public. Margaret's foundation board is in chaos. Claire is a mess, and you've shaken their world." I stood on the balcony, feeling the rhythm of the water in my heart, wondering what would happen next. I nodded, but she couldn't see me. "We file the lawsuit push for maximum damages, and you'll get everything house savings your portion of the trust. And the baby. We sat by the sea, its waves a vow. Margaret's history repeats," he said. "Her affair now, this. But you broke the cycle." His words were embers kindling my purpose. The ocean sang, "You are the tide's heart, Nora. Claim your dawn. Claire's on her own. She's cut ties with Daniel, and Margaret's retreating." Lena paused, and I exhaled the weight of their ruin, a strange relief. Richard arrived that morning, his embrace a harbor. "You're your grandmother's daughter," he said, expressing her pride. At dusk, Claire sent, "I'm sorry I was wrong. Can we talk?" Her pain was real, but her betrayal was sharper, and I didn't respond yet. Daniel's voicemails were frantic, and they said things like, "You've destroyed me, but I still love you. Lies, always lies." And, "You're the rising Nora. Your stars are yours." Margaret's silence was the loudest, and her empire was falling apart. I walked the shore, the sand cool, the stars fierce. My job at the design firm began the following week, a canvas for my dreams. The lawsuit would expose them, but my true victory was this. I was Nora, unbroken, unyielding, and their world burned, and I was the flame. The sea sung a song of rebirth, its waves illuminating the Maine coast. There beat a throb in my veins. A year had gone by since the reckoning at Margaret's 60th birthday dinner, where I had exposed Daniel's affair with Claire, 30, their child, and Margaret's 60 fraudulent trusts. The Robin's egg blue pregnancy test, and Daniel's note, "Love you always, D," were now ghosts, their sting lessened by time. I was Nora, now 35, no longer the woman who had dimmed her stars for Daniel's 38 skies. But a tide had risen, my heart a drum for my own truth. My design firm flourished, a canvas of my dreams. The house was mine. The lawsuit was settled. My $1 million inheritance was safe. My grandmother's voice danced in the sea's chant. The tide renews, Nora. So have you. Today, I strolled along my path, contemplating freedom, crafting delicate connections with Claire, and welcoming the new day I had seized. The sky was a tapestry of roses and gold. The morning was gentle, and I drove to my office in Portland. My firm was a haven of sleek lines and sunlight, and my clients' families, looking for warmth, businesses seeking vision, found in me, a creator, and my scars a map to their dreams. I had started the firm with my inheritance hiring designers, who saw beauty in resiliency, and my work was acclaimed. Claire's son James was born 7 months ago, and she had already begun sending tentative messages. Nora James smiled today. I wish you could see. I'd met him once, his eyes a glimmer of innocence, but trust with Claire was a thin thread. "We'll try," I told her at a cafe, while the ocean murmured through the window, but not as before. "You broke something sacred." She nodded, tears streaming down her eyes, and she said, "I know I was wrong. I thought it was love." Her pain was real, but so was mine. The tide whispered, "Healing is slow, Nora. Let it unfold." Daniel's fall was complete. The ethics probe had taken away his license, and his career was now a paralegal's desk in a small firm 2 states away. He had called last month with a thin voice saying, "Nora, you've won, I'm sorry." And I listened with a still heart. "You're not my burden, Daniel," I said. "Live with your choices." He had also hurt Claire, and his texts showed that he had seen her as a distraction, never intending to leave me. Lena Hart's lawsuit had won me the house, half our savings, and damages for emotional distress, which Daniel paid his pride, taking a heavier toll. Margaret's foundation had kicked her out, her social circle shunned her, and she had fled to a Florida condo. Her calls were infrequent, and her voice was a mix of regret and defiance. "Nora, we can rebuild," she said once, and I responded, "You built on lies, I build on truth." Richard was a frequent visitor, his presence a steady harbor. We ate by the sea, his eyes bright with pride. "You're your grandmother's fire," he said. "She saw your strength." He had moved to Maine to mentor engineers, rebuilding what Margaret's betrayal had strained. "Her affair with my brother broke me," he shared. "But you, Nora, you broke their cycle." His words were embers warming the cold places. I told him about my firm James and the cautious steps with Claire. "She's trying," I replied, "but it's not the same." He nodded. "Family, it's not blood, it's honor." His wisdom was a powerful force that lifted me up. Ethan Cole called too, and our conversations were no longer just business. "Not all men are Daniel," he said, his voice gentle. I smiled. "I know, but my heart needs time." Love remained open and patient. "You've won everything, house savings trust." Margaret's fraud charge is pending. Daniel's ruined Claire's on her own. Lena said crisply when the lawsuit's last paperwork arrived. I stood in my office with the light of the ocean shining through the window, wondering what had happened to her. I said, and Lena paused. I exhaled the weight of victory, bittersweet. Claire had been a pawn, but her decisions cut deep. I walked to the shore at dusk, the sand cool, the waves a chant of closure. A year ago, I'd stood here with the blue casing of the test in my mind, my heart raw but fierce, and I'd vowed to the woman in the mirror, "Never again, nothing, never again, less than you are." I had renewed that promise every dawn. The firm was my forge, late-night sketches, and the weight of starting over, but I'd survived my vision sharper than my pain. The tide vowed, "You are the dawn, Nora. Claim it." One evening, Claire came to the kitchen with James in her arms. The kitchen was alive with memories. "You're radiant, Nora," she said, her eyes soft. "This life, it's yours." I nodded, pouring tea. "I was invisible, Claire, dimming myself for him, for you. Never again." She cradled James. "I see that now. I'm trying to be better for him." Her sincerity was a spark, not enough to mend all but a start. "Keep trying," I said. "He's your truth now." We sat with the rhythm of the ocean as our bridge. I talked about my work designs that turned spaces into stories. My pain, Daniel's lies, Claire's betrayal. Margaret's greed was a lens sharpening my art. Claire's eyes were filled with regret. "You're her legacy, Nora. Not me." The stars above were fierce. My grandmother's voice was clear, the storm's end. Nora and its light. I stood on the shore at twilight, the waves a hymn of victory. Daniel's betrayal, Claire's child, Margaret's complicity, and a nearly drowning tide had shattered me a year ago. However, I had risen, forged by evidence texts, photos, the true trust, and allies, Lena, Ethan, Richard, and Sophia. I regretted nothing, not the lawsuit, the dinner, or the ruin, but their choices, the cracks they'd carved in my heart. Justice wasn't vengeance, but reclamation. I'd reclaimed my name, my stars, and my worth. My firm was my legacy. James was a shaky hope. Claire was a bridge half built. Love, I told Richard, was a door ajar. But I'd never shrink again, never silence my truth. The ocean roared, "You are the rising Nora, whole and glorious." I returned to my office, a client's blueprint, open a space to shape a life to build. And I was Nora. And like the tide, I was united, radiant, and free.